talk to the press for no good reason.
Well, she goes on that.
Gets pissed.
She goes on that rant because she's like, how do I know people are guilty? Well, when I ask them, you know, oh, Miss Joe, you should bring that swift hammer of justice or whatever it is, and then I'll ask one of them. I don't know how it goes, but then, well, Miss Joe, they probably had a reason for doing it. That's how I know.
That's the first anus we checked. That's
right. Because she was a prison guard. I remember that now.
Yeah, her mom was a prison guard. Yeah, that's usually the first anus we checked. Because a guilty conscience or a clean conscience don't need no mercy.
That's right.
All right, you want to talk wrestling? I guess.
Let's talk some wrestling.
Is this wrestling podcast going to turn into an office podcast, or should it?
I think it could.
It very easily could.
For the couple of office podcasts that there are, I don't think there's too many run by super fans. I think we should do some of the Lord's good work in there.
I'd question if it's the Lord's work, but I'd still do it anyway, right? Yeah. Welcome back to the WrestleChat Podcast. My name is the AntMan. His name is Michael. Here to talk some wrestling that happened over the past week. A lot has gone down. A lot of it, we are still kind of in that limbo phase of wrestling right now. That time, that lull between WrestleMania and the next big thing that happens, especially in WWE. Of course, the next big thing happens overseas in a week from Saturday, Clash at the Castle. That's if you don't count NXT Battleground as being a big thing, although it is a big landmark for those guys. We'll talk about that coming up here in just a little bit.
I wasn't sure if you were dropping Brock Lesnar hints there. I'm like, is he back in the fold? Like, what are we doing here?
You know what? If you hadn't have said that and we just left it alone, and he does come back at Clash at the Castle or something like that, we'd be like, we said it first. We hinted at it on the WrestleChat podcast.
Oh, please. Brock ain't flying all that way for the 5 minutes. He'll say, nah, do it on TV next week.
It does depend on how much money there is.
Maybe.
Speaking of money, you would think that maybe if they were going to run the same angle, they could have had AJ Styles wear a pink jacket. AJ Styles giving his best Mark Henry impression this week, teasing that he was going to be retiring. He never said that. The rest of the world said that, which they did play it up very nicely, and having Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson there to kind of hold off someone coming to rescue Cody Rhodes was a nice touch that we didn't have with, which I don't think we needed with Mark Henry. Mark smashing John Cena was plenty, but man, I remember the Mark Henry one clear as day.
Yep.
And we even talked with Mark here on the podcast about it, and dude, that was because it kind of was in that time in Mark Henry's life where you're like, okay, well, I could see him going on doing something else and not wrestling anymore. He's had a great career. And he brought his boots into the ring. He did all. That's one thing. The two things. It was the pink jacket and it was the boots. That's the two things that AJ was missing. Did it come across as good as it did in my mind to you, Michael?
No. And here's the thing. The Mark Henry segment was so iconic that and it was so well done that it can't really be done anymore. You know, like you can just see it coming a mile away. Like Mark Henry nailed it. With this AJ Styles version, I think it would have been much smarter to do like a permanent retirement injury angle. And, you know, with the exact same layout, just the premise be a career-ending injury. And I think it would have gone off way better. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it. It was still good. The problem is you saw it coming a mile away. And sometimes in wrestling, that's fine. There's just things like Cody winning over Logan Paul. You see it coming a mile away, but you're going to enjoy the ride, you know? In this particular situation, I don't think seeing it coming was the right move when you're trying to set up an angle and get heat. So I wish they would have gone more of an injury route rather than a retirement route. But I'm still glad we're here. I'm stoked that we're getting AJ Styles, Cody Rhodes, because you just know it's going to be a banger, and or multiple bangers, hopefully. But but yeah, I mean, you can't really think of a better thing to come up with in this, median point between Mania and SummerSlam. That's going to be a really, really fun match to watch. And even though I do believe that likely Cody will retain the title, I believe because of who AJ Styles is, he should never be underestimated to pick up a title ever.
No, I agree. And that's what I think is odd. What I did think was odd about the angle in the first place was that I never once believed that AJ Styles was going to retire.
Right.
That may have been something that was going around, and never once did I go, man, yeah, he's had injury after injury, or he's kind of done his thing and he's run his course, and he probably could hang it up right about now. Now, in 2 years, and he said, he goes through this nice run with Cody. Maybe he gets, I don't know what happens in the next year or so with AJ Styles, but there could have been more to set up to make it a little more believable because it kind of felt like it was out of nowhere that AJ's retiring. I did like how it mimicked or imitated or reflected the Mark Henry point, and that was kind of what I was the angle I was going at there with it. I didn't think that it was as believable. Mark, again, I'll reiterate that the Mark's, I felt like, not that it was time for Mark to hang up his boots, but Mark had several title runs. Mm-hmm. He was kind of in that place where you're like, okay, yeah, I could see Mark, and it was also a different time in WWE where you kind of saw, okay, maybe Mark is moving on to a different part in the company, and some other guys are going to move up into that place. And man, that's just but that's the problem with it, is we're always going to compare those two. And you're right, it was just a fantastic angle with Mark Henry when it happened. He did tweet AJ.
Do you think that nod was any? Because this just dawned on me while we were talking here. Do you think that there's any coincidences in the fact that Mark's contract came up at the same time that they're doing a nod to this angle? It seems like convenient timing, don't you think?
There's a lot of everything is much more fluid than it used to be in WWE. I mean, we'll get to it here in just a little bit. When you have people from other organizations coming to fight for a title in WWE, and they're not WWE talent, I think anything could happen now. But I did see him, he popped up in MLW, and the word is that he had several other dates already on the books with MLW, and we'll be doing some more with them since he is no longer with AEW. He's also a comedian now. He's doing a lot of dates as a comedian. At WrestleMania, he DJ'd a party.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's next for Mark. Maybe we should see if he can't drop in and hang with us for 10 or 15 minutes sometime and just see what's going on with Mark now that he's moved off from AEW. Speaking of moving off, let's go over it. We mentioned I just lost some equipment. That's okay though. Can you still see me? Can you see me?
I see you.
The NXT Battleground is coming up on Sunday, and this is pretty cool. It's from UFC's Apex Arena. I don't know if we've talked about UFC before. You like UFC? It's not something you watch on a daily or a weekly basis, Michael. I know that, but the Apex Arena kind of became "quote unquote" famous during the COVID era because that's where they were having fights. They could test. They could keep it controlled. It was small, and that's what I find interesting about this. It's a PLE for NXT that you might be able to fit as many people as you do in the NXT Performance Center. Why go to Las Vegas to do it when you have about the same amount of people in Orlando, Florida?
I'm looking up the seating capacity here.
I didn't even think I could do that.
Apex,
yeah, that's a good idea.
Apex, they're saying they're adding an ability to seat 1,000. So it's sub 1,000 right now.
Okay.
Max seating capacity of 500. Wow.
And I'm not sure that it's much less than that, or probably right around that at NXT's place.
Yeah.
Every single Tuesday night. And so I find that interesting. I do know that they're going to do NXT Underground. Shayna Baszler is fighting in that. So I don't know if there's an octagon in another room and they're going to go over there and do that and come back.
I think there is multiple rooms, actually.
Are there?
But I think that's a great way to pay WrestleMania prices for an NXT PLE.
Exactly. And you get some, for lack of a better term, and I hate that I'm using this on the podcast, but there's some synergy. between WWE and UFC. So we'll put a pin in that and circle back. Just to clean up on all the isms corporately. There's some pretty cool fights in this, though. TNA Knockouts champ Jordan Grace is going to be taking on NXT Women's champ Roxanne Perez. So this is the one we were just talking about, saying that people champs from other organizations, TNA, Total Nonstop Action, coming over to fight for the women's title, the NXT Women's title here at this PLE. That one, just having somebody come over is not something that would have happened in the past, or hasn't really happened in the past. But to have them come back and actually fight for a title, if it didn't feel like it was a new regime before, you definitely know it is now.
Absolutely, and I was as I was making sure I was reading up for our show, I was reminded that Michael Cole dropped some other brand and promotion names on Monday night in more of the Lucha Libre fashion. I don't remember what the promotion was called. It was one that didn't sound familiar to me, but
okay.
But it is a whole new age, and I'm telling you, man, I'm not in charge in WWE. I don't know if anybody knew that or not, but I'm not in charge of WWE.
Yeah, you're not doing that.
But man, I would totally put that strap on Jordan Grace and
have her carry both.
Because if you're gonna do it, do it. Like, I think everybody expects her to lose just so there's not a cross-brand thing. It's tough because from a booking perspective, I'm blanking on her name. Help me out.
Roxanne Perez.
Roxanne Perez, yeah.
Yeah.
She hasn't had it, a very long time.
No.
It's I believe her second run with it. So from a booking perspective, I don't know that it's smart when you're trying to keep Roxanne in a prominent position for the NXT brand. But man, I wish that they would put the championship on Jordan just to signify, like, of all the things that we've seen that Vince McMahon is no longer in control.
Yeah.
That would be the most definitive thing
absolutely.
We've seen yet.
Without
and
a doubt.
it would just be exciting because it would open up possibilities and things that, we've not seen before. I think, I've mentioned several times on the show how there was a few times back 5-10 years ago, whatever it was, where the few times they changed, they had titles change hands at house shows. And
right.
I remember that made me much more interested in attending because, anything can happen at a house show. And I feel like this has to be the same thing, because if it's just Jordan comes over, loses to the NXT champ, somebody else goes over, loses to Jordan in TNA, like, that's not, just don't do it,
I agree.
So I'll be excited to see what becomes of it. I'll be watching very closely. And that alone has served the purpose that I know that they're going for, because I'm going to watch, because that has caught my attention.
Well, and think about this too. You bring up a great point, because if you just look at the two ladies side by side, I would lay down my money instantly on Jordan Grace. Mm-hmm. I would lay down money if she was fighting both me and you, and we had a bull. Yeah, that was also in our car.
She is yoked, dude.
No kidding. So, to your point, though, is that she walks out of there with the NXT Women's title. There's not one person that goes, I don't know. Well, what do they? There is, because it's the internet wrestling community. But let's just say that there's no credible thought going, well, why? I don't know why you'd do that. I mean, that doesn't really make sense. Yeah, it does. Yeah. She could whip anybody. Yep. She could. I would like to. All intents and purposes, let's put her in a match with Trick. I mean, come on, because that's believable as well. And I think that it is a very likely possibility that Jordan Grace does walk out of there with the NXT Women's title. That'll be fun. That'll be on Sunday. Starts at, I believe, 8 o'clock Eastern, which is interesting. So they do the early shows on Saturday, but they do the late shows on Sunday when you got to get up the next morning.
So
why can't you put that one at noon? You get out of church, you go home, you cook up something and watch some wrestling.
Dude, that's the dream, man. That's the dream.
Staying on NXT for a minute. Shock last week, not only that Jordan Grace came over, but that right at the very end, someone who's quietly left AEW, just quietly was no longer on TV, which is not strange for AEW. You'll see a big angle 3 weeks in a row, and then both of those people won't be seen for the next 4 months, and then you're expected to remember it when it does come back. But all ego Ethan Page completely disappears from AEW. Just kind of just casually goes into the shadows, and then people don't really say anything. And then he pops on the screen on Tuesday. Jeez Louise. How cool was that? And then everybody going, oh, yeah, he signed a deal with NXT. And he was real quick to come out and go, I haven't signed with anybody. Mm-hmm. Now, for full transparency, we are recording this on Tuesday before NXT tonight. This is obviously here on Wednesday or afterwards. So I'm anxious to hear what happens on NXT with how he presents that, because I did see that he hasn't signed anything with NXT yet. So it's bleeding over not only from what will be on TV or as you're watching this has already been on TV, that is he going to sign with NXT, but he's also doing it in his real life. I haven't signed with anybody. I can go anywhere. And I love that. I love that they're bringing, in more ways than one, reality back into things here.
Absolutely. And I want to speak to how smart you assume Paul Levesque, but he may give credit to other people involved as well, but assuming it's Paul, this is how this is how wrestling evolves.
Yeah.
Is I think that, especially in the Monday Night Wars and the years that followed, several years that followed, you needed to be an exclusive brand. You needed to protect your brand. And I think everything that Vince McMahon did up until really 2015-ish maybe, I think there was good reason to have, really secure borders, if you will, on the WWE brand. With as much as professional wrestling is going through a resurgence, yes, WWE is doing great, but it's resurging all around. And where I'm going with this is to have Ethan Page show up and not be under contract at NXT is the best of both worlds to say, we're not going to let you on Monday Night Raw, Right. But for him to show up, I was like, wow, that is super cool. Wait. And it dovetails right into our last conversation of, can anything happen at NXT?
Yeah. Yeah.
And as WWE builds these relationships, I mean, TNA, I'm sure, is more than happy to ride WWE's coattails, especially if they're really doing business in good faith. And so, man, I say this all the time. It is the best time ever to be a professional wrestling fan. And these little things that we're getting, like Jordan Grace and like Ethan Page, it is just signs that things are evolving for the better. And yeah, somebody can come in for one feud and they don't have to be under contract, and they can leave after that and go do something else. And you know what? It's okay because it lets us tune in, enjoy it, and then the entertainment and the business can coexist, but they're not exclusive with each other.
What's interesting is that we've talked for a couple of weeks about the lull in pro wrestling after WrestleMania. It's really good when WrestleMania is absolutely spectacular and the lull is really, really good. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's kind of where we are right now. I wanted to bring this up. Ricochet. We've seen a lot of Ricochet recently. I also heard that his contract is getting close to being up. And who has access to this information of people's contracts? I'll be honest, I have a contract with one place that I work that I'm not even sure when my contract is up. How do people know when wrestlers are up? But evidently his is. What I think is interesting is he's been on TV a lot lately, but there's been something missing with Ricochet. He's actually the WWE Speed champion, but he never brings out the title unless he's on Speed, which is just on Wednesdays on X. Is that right?
Something
Did I get that
like
right?
That, yeah.
I find that. Why wouldn't you bring more attention to Speed and have him bring the title out?
I think part of it is they're figuring out what it is right now.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by the idea. I think this is the better version of cruiserweight that is not cruiserweight.
305 or
whatever it was, 305 Live or something like that. 205. I don't know. Either way.
It probably is 205. That's more accurate.
Yeah. But it is interesting. I don't know if they still feel like it's in a beta or test phase, But Ricochet being around without that, now it is like a really gimmicky looking title.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
I mean, it's not the worst thing that he's not.
Way better than the 24/7 champion, though.
Yeah. Green is just not a good belt color. Even
the old school,
the super big gold or whatever they call it. Or the green monster or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
You know, it was cool, but it was green.
I agree.
But yeah, it is strange. So I don't know what the goal is, but I've watched them. Like when it comes across my X feed, I'm like, I got 2.5-ish minutes, because somebody usually gets a pinfall in 2.5 to 3 minutes or whatever, because that's the rules. And I watch it. And so I think it's a cool idea. It's a little different way to get a wrestling fix, but how do you legitimize it? How do you really make it something worth watching? I think there's things you could do, but we just don't know what the resources they want to put into it,
Well, it feels like that X is trying to change the way that consumers use their product, spend more time there. And I know we've had episodes on X when we were doing them live, but that's not how I consume X. That's not. I don't do it for a match or watch a show, or I read. And it's quick reads. It's just headlines, and then tap into to either watch or listen or read something deeper. Yeah. But just watching it on that platform is not where I am with that. And I wonder if that's not the gap that they're trying to bridge there with that show. Love that they're making content for it, because that is definitely needed. So I do like that part. I think it'd be interesting to bring more attention to it, is to have Ricochet with that title. I understand some confusion if he's wrestling Braun Strowman. I'm just throwing out a name there, but he's wrestling somebody in a match that's not a speed match, but he has the speed title. I guess that could be confusing. I just think it could bring some more attention to it, if you would. Let's jump over to AEW just for a second. They're doing something that I haven't seen other than set up shop, and this is where we do things from, like NXT does, or like WCW did at the backlot there at Disney's MGM back in the day. We have AEW going to the eSports arena in Arlington, Texas, and spending just right at a month and doing a slew of shows at the same place. Most of them are collisions, so they're doing collision and then going out and doing the Dynamite. And then they're coming back and doing collision there again. And they're doing that from, I have it down here, it's July 20th through August 17th. And they're also doing a Ring of Honor pay-per-view as well, Death Before Dishonor. Really cool, because that's not very far from me. Arlington's just up the road. But how interesting would that be if that's not something that we started seeing, is like set up shop for a month in a place, make the tickets very affordable. Here, the eSports arena is also very, very unique as well. And Arlington, the city, getting behind this and bringing more eyeballs to what they're doing there is really, really inventive and really cool that they're doing. And again, like I said, it's cool that it's just up the street from me. Will you tune in because it's there, just to see what they're doing with it?
I think there's potential, and I think there's a playbook to pull from, like with WWE during the pandemic when they pushed the Thunderdome really hard. Yeah. So I think there's the low-hanging fruit, and then I think there's really making the best of the situation. The low-hanging fruit is we're just going to set up like normal, because we don't know the situation. They may have to put up and tear down, for other events during their residency, as a production nerd, with a history of being a touring musician and all kinds of stuff. It's not as simple as like, well, we're just here. No, because you may have 4 other events between your 2 events, Yep. And so if they have the opportunity to do something unique in that space, I think there's a lot of really cool things that could be done. Yeah. If they're just going to stay put to save on travel costs and, fill the arena a couple times. I mean, really, if I could buy a month-long, I just threw a guitar pick. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, but if you can get a month-long season pass, where for, even if it's $500, $600, $700, I can buy, tickets for all 6, 8 shows, whatever it is. Man, right. I'd do it in a heartbeat. different, take my kids in different intervals and all kinds of stuff. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, that would
but
be really
we just
cool.
don't know what they're going to do. But it is an unusual move, I would say, at this juncture. I don't want to be mean, but it initially looks like to me like, hey, we got to tighten our belt a little bit on, some expenses and stuff. It may not be that, but unfortunately it kind of has that look to it. So I'm hoping that they are able to do something that maximizes whatever it really is. I
would like to see both on TV, how it's presented, what attention it brings to the esports arena there, and also to see what it would be like to be in person. So I'm going to try to make it up for a couple of those shows. Back to WWE for one more segment before we take off here. The Liv and Dom soap opera. This is actually, it's fun and comical and serious. It's got all the elements that you need to get involved, to get attached to it. I think what I've loved more than anything that they've done so far is that Liv jumped on Instagram and went and liked everything from Dom.
So good.
Everything, every single thing in his feed she likes. So you just get this long string of live, heart, live, heart, live, heart. Is this post, this post, this post, and he's just scrolling, and he does for days. I thought that was very humorous. But she also stepped in front of Braun Strowman on Monday to hold off the big man from beating up Dom. What are you thinking about this telenovela?
Dude, it's really good, and honestly, the memes and the jokes that have come out of it have been really good too. Because when she was kind of, I gotta be careful how I say this. We try and keep the show nice and safe, but as she was in his very personal space in the corner of the ring there, there were guys that were screen grabbing it and saying like, "This man is a concrete wall. I would have folded like a ton of bricks," and I probably would have too, and so it is really good. But what it's doing, it adds a little bit of light and fluffy comedy to it. Yeah. But I really think this is paving the way for an epic return for Rhea Ripley.
I think so too.
And many people have said this. This is all over the internet. This was not my joke, not my idea. If this does not end in a custody of Dominic match, we just need to close up shop and go home.
What are we even doing here? In fact, who I saw tweet that? Jordan Grace.
Yeah.
From TNA.
Yep.
And that is so good. If we don't get the custody of Dominic ladder match, and then what are we even doing here?
If we're doing the Mark Henry callback, let's do the Eddie and Ray callback. Like,
absolutely.
Just please, like, nobody from WWE may see this, but please give it
Dom
to
in
us.
the middle of both of them. Just classic. I love it. I love it. Well, excited for this weekend for NXT Battleground from UFC's Apex Arena. Of course, 1 week from Saturday, we'll get Clash at the Castle. Excited to see what goes down there. And WWE is already promoting Money in the Bank, and that doesn't happen until July 6th. We've got Jey Uso already saying, yep, I'm going to climb that ladder. I'm going to get the briefcase, and I'll be the Money in the Bank guy. The thing is, I can see that happening for him. I kind of hope it does, but we'll get into that coming up in the next couple of weeks as we move along here. Anything else we need to hit before we go, Michael?
It is a great time and the best time to be a fan of professional wrestling.
It sure is. For Michael Glavin, I'm the Ant-Man. We'll see you next week here on the WrestleChat Podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us.